now have the pleasure of welcoming two advocates who are fierce, loyal, and good friends to the Council and to our work. Since 2018, Senator Shelley has represented the 37th Senate District and is chair of the Senate's Committee on Education. A Yonkers native, Senator Mayer was formerly a three-term member of the State Assembly, was senior counsel at the National State Attorney General Program at Columbia, and chief counsel to the Senate Conference. Earlier, I referred to Senator Mayer, and just now as a fierce advocate and a good friend, I've watched this work firsthand and had the opportunity to speak with her directly. She's made it very clear that she is committed to all of the children in the state as she takes her role as Education Committee Chair to be a responsibility undertaken without regional prejudice, but rather a commitment to each and every child. Assemblyman Michael Benedetto has represented the 82nd Assembly District since being elected in 2004 and is now serving as the chair of the Assembly Education Committee. An enthusiastic, unyielding fighter for education, one should not be surprised to find out that his political career was preceded by a 35-year career as an elementary and secondary teacher. He also co-founded a newspaper, the Bronx Times Reporter. Media titan and politics. Seems like a man ahead of his time. Assemblyman Benedetto has also demonstrated a willingness to listen, to learn, and to lead on behalf of children from every district in the state. I've also been privileged to observe this commitment to learning firsthand. We are grateful for his work, his support, and his advocacy as well. These fine leaders have been our partners. We are grateful for that and grateful for them spending time with us this morning. Leading a discussion this morning with them, moderating that, will be our Deputy Director for Advocacy Research and Communication, Bob Lowry, and Greg Burke, Assistant Director for Governmental Relations and Assistant Counsel at the Council. Please welcome all of them to the stage this morning.
Thank both Senator Mayer and Assemblyman Benedetto for being here. Do you have a preference who goes first? We suggested each taking 10 minutes or so to just give an update on how things are going with the budget process and to share some thoughts on priorities of their colleagues.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to go first. We have a crazy day, and we all had a crazy night, so welcome to Albany, that's all I can say. It's a pleasure to be here. First of all, thank you for what you do. This is a tough time to be a superintendent in a school. The district I represent, which goes from the Bronx border in Yonkers to the Connecticut border in northern Westchester, represents sort of the diversity of the schools in our state. Urban challenge schools like the city of Yonkers, Village of Portchester, high-achieving schools that are doing extraordinarily well but still have a tremendous property tax burden, and schools sort of in the middle, struggling to find a way. And I think both Mike and I view it as our responsibility to be a spokesperson for every child in every district, regardless of zip code, regardless of whether they're represented by a Democrat or a Republican. Our job is to fight for every child and to support every school. So we appreciate what you do. We are in the midst of what I call a budget fight. We are arguing with the governor for more money. I am hopeful that the Assembly and the Senate majorities will be on the same page in pushing the governor to phase in a full funding of the foundation aid formula. We have waited too long. The money is owed. There's not a question that the money is owed. There's a question of the will to get it to the schools that need it and to get it out the door. I am confident that with the Assembly and the Senate majority, we are going to do our very best to aim for a full 3-year phase-in. We hopefully are going to ask for, 1.7, something like that, billion this year. I hope we're on the same page. We're not quite there yet, but this is the #1 priority for our conference, is to get foundation aid in the mix, get it out the door, and frankly, to have the revenue to spend on schools. One of the experiences I had going around the state is it's very clear schools have not recovered from the gap elimination adjustment, #1. #2, the changing needs of your students, whether you have more English language learners, greater mental health needs, additional special ed needs. These are problems that all of our districts have, and foundation aid was intended to go to schools with the greatest needs. Let's get it out the door. So that's #1 issue. We are going to reject, I'm very confident, the governor's proposals to consolidate aids into foundation aid. I think that's a terrible idea, and I think my colleagues agree, and we're also going to, I'm very hopeful, reject the efforts to cap transportation and building aid going forward. Those are not a credit card for schools. The idea that you have a credit card, I would like to have a credit card as good as you have, which is a credit card that SED looks over your shoulder at every time you try to use it. That is not what is called a credit card. You actually have to justify expenses for reimbursement, and we ought to ensure that you have at least some predictability about reimbursement, because you don't have predictability about foundation aid, you don't have predictability about school aid, and we want to strike out the governor's efforts to do that. So I'm very hopeful we're going to do that. Some of the other things that are priorities for me is having some additional money set aside. It won't be enough. I hope we can do it for mental health support services for your students. I would like you to be able to get, and I know my colleagues agree, the support you need, whether it's psychologists, social workers. I've been in too many schools where, frankly, the school is disrupted by a child who simply is incapable of lasting through the day and has a serious outburst requiring attention of the entire school. We really need to restore some degree of assistance to these students, and I hope that we put some money into that. I am also hopeful that we put some money into additional resources for English language learners. The world has changed. I represent the suburbs. It used to be maybe 3% of your district was English language learners. I represent the village of Portchester. 70% of the school is Spanish-speaking of the school district. The city of Yonkers, over 50%. The needs of particularly new entrants who are English language learners, particularly in the higher grades, is a serious challenge that is different than when foundation aid was originally constructed, and I believe there should be additional funds to help you get the resources and the teachers and the support you need to have these students succeed. After all, that's our joint goal, to do the best we can for these students. A few of your other issues, and I'll turn it over to Mike, on your proposal about capital outlay of increasing the limit, I'm very supportive. I'm hopeful we can get there. That is something that we are going to try to achieve in our budget. Another issue that you care about is increasing the aidable salary cap for BOCE CTE teachers. We are all strongly supportive of CTE. Frankly, I think it was left behind for too many years, and we're slowly making it up. But CTE is the path to a middle-class job for students, whether they go to a 2-year college or they get an accreditation. We need to sustain and support CTE in every way. There's great opportunity for our kids to get good-paying jobs, and we're simply not matching the education with a job. So CTE is important, and increasing special services aid is something that we are going to push for as well. So there's a number of other things that we did last year working with the Assembly and the governor, as you know. Many of them were in requests from the school community to have more flexibility, more responsiveness. Some I know you may disagree with. Some of them are challenges to address some of the unintended consequences. But that being said, I think you will find in Mike Benedetto and myself and our colleagues people who are willing to really go the extra mile and fight for you, but most importantly for the kids. This is really about a commitment to these children in public schools as the lifeline and the lifeblood of a strong New York State. It has to be our #1 priority. It is in our conference, and I know that if we work together and we resolve differences in a unified way with your fantastic staff here in Albany, we will be able to push back against proposals that we think are not good for kids in schools and try to get more money in the system, more flexibility for districts, and the resources to address the particular needs of a changing New York. So with that, I'm happy to sit down. I'll be glad to answer questions later. Thank you.
Good morning, all. How nice to be here. It's an honor to be addressing the people who are the leaders of all our school districts. As a teacher for 35 years, I was always looking towards the principal for direction. I was always looking for guidance and how the principal oversaw the school building. And by my observation over those years, I also realized that it was the superintendents who was overlooking all the school principals and making sure that they were doing the right thing. And when that chain somehow was broken, the principals weren't overseeing the teachers correctly, the superintendents weren't out there overseeing the principals, there was a breakdown in the school. I witnessed it firsthand in my own school, and I saw the difference it made. And fortunately, when I left the school, when I was elected to the state assembly, that had readjusted itself, and the school that had gone down is now back up. So I applaud you and realize absolutely the importance of your job in the educational chain that's out there. Without you, the whole thing will break down, okay? So I admire what you do. I applaud you to keep doing it. Our job here in the state is trying to find the right resources and to give to you to make sure you can do that job in the best of all possible ways. Basically, I can come up here right now and say what Shelley said, and then sit down, because basically we're on the same page. Shelley and I haven't talked yet. That will come a little later. We're kind of busy putting our budgets together, both in the Senate and in the Assembly. But what we've done so far in the Assembly is almost mirrored from what Shelley just said. Putting the money out there, get the foundation aid funds out there, making sure you use that money wisely is up to you. Going around the state, as I did last fall, listening to different superintendents here, there, getting their opinions on what should be done, both with the funding formula and with programs that come into the schools, we got a general sense of what we need to do. Universally throughout the state, the need for social services, the need for mental health services, whether you're in New York City, whether you're in central New York, the southern tier, or out west in the state, everybody was asking more funds for mental health services, the social services needed in school. That's one of our goals that we're trying to put forth this year. Again, paralleling what Shelley had said in her speech. What I want to do also is take a look at many of the schools who deal with our special needs children, the inequities in salary that are out there that's causing many of these schools to shut down. We've got to adjust that. Those are a valuable part of the educational change, dealing with the kids who are most vulnerable, and another priority. Another thing I would like to see put into this budget, and we'll be fighting to get, I don't know if I can get there yet, is the awareness that we must put into screening children at an early age to find out if there is dyslexia there. If there's a problem out there, we're not catching the kids that we need to catch until much later in their educational career. There are new methods out there that can possibly screen very quickly, very cheaply, at a very young age. I'm talking kindergarten and first grade, that can effectively identify children who need special help. Identify them, at the same time work with the teachers to make sure they're being trained on how to deal with children with dyslexia, and at the same time look towards best practices on what should be done without the children. The statistics we don't know, some people say 5% of the population. Some people say as many as 20% of the population have a serious dyslexic problem. If that is indeed the case, and I truly believe it is, then we have an obligation as educators identify and teach. And when we do that, we are going to prevent in the long run many of the problems we have. When you look at the statistics of children who are in jail, children, they're young adults, when they're in jail, who don't have a high school diploma, 40% of them test out to be dyslexic in some way. Is that a coincidence? We are failing those young people, and we are continuing to maintain a problem in our society. It's important to do early screening, good teaching methods, have the proper teaching to deal with it. And of course, it all boils down getting the money for all of these programs. And that in essence is what this budget negotiation is going to be all about. I have absolute trust in the people in front of me in this room, that you know what to do, what's best for your districts, and how to distribute the money. Our problem is getting that money in the proper amount to give to you. How do we do that? I don't know. There are proposals out there for more taxes among the rich, more taxes that might come in for outside sources like legalization of internet betting, for marijuana legalization, and all of that revenue coming in. I don't know how we get there, but we've got to find a way to get there, to raise the funds, because the schools for too long has been neglected in the proper amount of money. And you guys doing the great job that you do day in and day out, year in and year out, don't have the money. You've been handcuffed in what you can do in your schools. The Senate and the Assembly will work together. We will try our best to raise as much money as we can for these programs to fully fund the foundation aid. And yes, I believe what we're going to do, Shelley, is probably about the same, a 1.6 or 1.7 with a 3-year elimination of the gap. I don't know if we're going to be able to make it, but we're going to fight like the devil to get there, to do it, because you deserve more. Enough. I'll sit down. I'll wait questions. Do you need this? Okay, we'll go together. Good. Yeah.
Thank you both. And I do want to pick up on something that Senator Mayer said. I've worked for the council for 18 years, and I don't recall as many positive legislative pieces being enacted as in last year's budget. You know, the first adjustment in the salary cap for BOCES superintendents since 2003, authorization of the TRS reserve, dealing with a problem that had arisen with availability of dual enrollment classes at community colleges, tuition-free, transportation, piggybacking, and so forth. So thank you to them for that. This is a busy time for the legislature. In addition to the routine business, it's also a day when the legislature will be electing 6 members of the Board of Regents. There's 17, so that's actually a third of the members. But we do have time, I'd say, for 2 questions. There are microphones in the aisles. Please take advantage of them. Any questions?
Don't feel obligated.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're good. Go find the money.
Good.
Thank you.
we're
Thank
good?
you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.